1057. It's time for Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors on ESPN 1027 FM. Brought to you by Bowling Green Refrigeration, Heating and Cooling and Renegade Marine and Outdoor Center, with your host Brian Webb. Also starring John Kirby and Sergeant J.D. Williams from Mohawk Outdoors, Josh Honeycutt from Realtree Outdoors. Also made possible by the Van Store Bowling Green in Glasgow, your Can-Am headquarters. Our national sponsor, Big & J Long Range Attractives. Segments in part by Rockcastle Shooting Center, The Rock, and Renegade Marine, featuring Realtree's Michael Pendley Timber 2 Table Wild Game Recipes. Made possible by Outback Steakhouse, Bowling Green. And all phone interviews via the Linex of Bowling Green hotline. Get ready for all things outdoors. Here's your host, Brian Webb.
Outdoor fans, another installment. Matter of fact, we are creeping up on 200 episodes of Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors here on ESPN 1027 WWKU. You're hearing us up there in Barron County with your ears on, I hope, at 1230 WCDS there, right next to Barron River Lake, which I heard today, next week, sometime should be at Summer Pool. That's going to make everybody happy. I'm joined by my co-host and Podna and good buddy Josh Honeycutt. I'm honored to be a good friend of, man. How you been?
What's happening, man?
Not too much. John's got daddy duties tonight, so he's out at the ballpark. You don't want to miss those moments. Josh, one of these days you'll know what I mean.
There you go.
But none too early. You know, you want to get all your deer hunting out of you and all that. No, because I know what Josh would do with the little one. He would be taking them straight to the woods. I know he would.
We'll see about that.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Well,
yeah, if I have a little one of my own, he'll definitely be going to the woods with me.
I would say the big man's going to bless you with a litter, buddy. Maybe 3 or 4. Can you handle 4 or 5? Can you handle a Brady Bunch situation?
Don't put that evil on me,
That's more of a pack.
Yeah, that is kind of a pack.
More of a herd. You know, I'm looking closer to not a herd. So maybe not that many.
You're listening to Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors, and we're getting ready to get the one and only Michael Pendley, Timber to Table. I'm lucky to have 2 Realtree guys on my show that are not only absolute consummate professionals and consummate outdoorsmen, they're also great people. And that's another thing that we're very lucky and very blessed to have these guys on. And they work for an awesome organization. A godly organization, which is great, a bonus. And I've got one of them. I'm going to put my ears on, Josh, so I can listen to this guy. But tonight's segment, like it is every week, is brought to you by your local Outback Steakhouse right here on Scottsville Road in Bowling Green. Scottsville Road, the mess
You've been practicing
that it is. I just hit it right every now and then, G-Man. The 4th region tournament gets me really poised for that because it's straight Aussie talk. But we want to talk about delivery tonight, Josh, and Michael Pendley. I think we got him. Mike, you're on the Line X hotline, aren't you, buddy?
I am.
Oh, always a pleasure. I was just getting ready to tell Josh that he can call in that Outback there to our local store on Scottsville Road, and they'll deliver that to you, man. I mean, nothing better than got your, you're cleaning your harvest that day, whatever it was you got, Pendley, and you're not going to have it ready for dinner. You just call Outback. They'll bring it over. They'll bring their ribs over until you get your ribs ready the next night. Ain't that a good idea?
You can't beat that.
I saw you shared an awesome-looking dish, and I wanted to show it to Garrett. Garrett, I'm going to turn your mic on, Garrett. Hang out with Pendley because he never gets to hang out with you.
Can we set up a Michael Pendley delivery service? Is that possible?
That's a great idea, man.
Better to set up a cook down there because it'd be a little chilly by the time I got there.
Yeah, it probably would. We'll get one of those really nice trucks that have the cool temperature-controlled beds. But listen, man, I saw that, and it looked – I mean, I didn't get to read it, but I shared it, but I was on the run, and my days are insane. So I was on the run and didn't get to read it much, but looked like almost like fajitas or something. I don't know what it was. My goodness. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, yeah, it's kind of similar. And we went back to venison this week. And what it is, normally if you say stir fry, you think of an Asian-inspired dish, something done in a wok. But other countries do stir fry too. And, it's basically just hot and fast. In a hot skillet or a hot wok. It doesn't have to be Asian-inspired to do a stir-fry. So we picked one from Peru, of all places, this week, and we made it with venison. and it's called lomo saltado. And basically all it is a venison stir fry. You know, they usually use beef down there, but we substituted venison. It works great. And what you do is you heat up an iron skillet, get it really good and hot, and slice up about 1.5 pounds of venison roast or backstrap or whatever you want to use into little bite-sized pieces. And you don't want to overcrowd the skillet, so I like to do it in 2 or 3 batches. But you want to brown it really well on both sides. You want to get a lot of good color on the outside and do it fast so that it doesn't overcook. And then you take the venison completely out of the pan and put a little soy sauce on it, set it over to the side. You toss in some red onions, some peppers, some tomatoes, and some seasoning, serrano peppers, and then a seasoning paste that they use called ají amarillo paste. And basically all it is a pepper paste. And you can find that in a lot of groceries or order it online. A little bit of soy sauce and a little bit of white vinegar. You cook those vegetables together, and you put the meat back in it. And then this is where it gets a little interesting. And I'm not sure how they ended up using French fries in Peru, but they do. They add French fries, cooked French fries to it. So we get the little shoestring French fries, and we cook them in the oven really hot so that they get nice and crisp. And then we just add them to the dish right at the very end. So basically you got meat, vegetables, and potatoes all in one pan.
Just thank God there's not a webcam in here, because every week you tell these stories, Michael, these recipes. I'm over here drooling, and Brian's just laughing at me because all the ingredients you're throwing in, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's killer, man.
I'm gonna have to bring Garrett up to Bourbon Row sometime, and so he can meet Michael Penley and
to steal John Kirby's line.
We'll, take some distillery tours while we're up here.
Yeah, he's 21.
Don't tease me with a good time.
Let's talk a little outdoors while we got you, Penley. We keep you on for a minute if you're eligible for that. Man, I tell you, I was just asking Josh, how I don't think we really put a bow on turkey season yet. We were going to kind of start. I was going to ask you guys the numbers around your area and see what Josh. I know nobody's really got the scientific numbers, but all in all, I think it was pretty good turkey season, wasn't it?
Yeah, we ended up just shy of 30,000, right, Michael?
Yeah, it was better than last year by 5,000 or 6,000 birds. I think it's still not where we were at our peak a few years ago, but it was definitely better than last year. So
yeah, I think that peak was somewhere around that 36,000 mark, right?
Yeah.
It's been a few years since we've been there. Probably been since about 2010, 2011, somewhere
I think,
in there.
2010 to 2012, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
I think is when we were seeing our biggest numbers statewide.
Yeah, we haven't quite been there in a while.
We had a decent season. We saw a lot of birds. So.
Yeah, and again, it's interesting how we've seen the decline in some places and not in others, because we had a pretty good year too. We saw a lot of turkeys, probably not quite at historical high, but just below. In some places and right at historical high in others. But yeah, it's pretty interesting, because, some people, as you mentioned last week, aren't seeing any birds, or saw very few this year. And then you go a few miles down the road and they're just everywhere. So it's interesting how the localized populations have shifted, and some areas have been affected and some haven't.
Yeah. And, I don't know what to attribute that to, unless it is weather related, or a high predator content, high predator population in a particular area. Now, I will say this. I know one of the guys that, was saying that he didn't see a whole lot of birds, and he's got a great big lease, a big farm, and a big lease next to it. And, traditionally that area holds a lot of birds, but they see a ton of bobcats. And they've got a trapper that comes in, and he always gets his limit of bobcats and ends up releasing a few that's over his limit. So, that might be something in that particular area that's, cutting into the population a little bit. So.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of a perfect storm, the last 4 to 5 years, and especially the last 2 to 3, it's kind of culminated into a perfect storm with all of the degradation in habitat, aging forests, not a lot of timber being cut, increased predator populations, less trapping and predator hunting. The flooding, as you mentioned, weather-related stuff. All these things have kind of happened all at once, and so it's not only affected the turkeys, but it's also affected the deer. And I think Kentucky and Illinois are the only two states left with fawn recruitment rates over 1.01 fawn per doe. It's obviously taking a toll on all wildlife.
Yeah. And if you want just a little micro area to look at that illustrates that really well with the deer, look at Land Between the Lakes. And I don't know, if you guys were around Land Between the Lakes 15, 20 years ago much.
Yes.
We hunted down there a ton. And, man, it was covered up with deer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we had a lot of logging going on inside the LBL area. We had crops being raised. They were still putting in food plots. We had a lot of habitat going on in there. And now they have completely stopped logging in LBL. It's in court battles right now, but they pretty much shut it down. And what you've got is a mono habitat. You've got hardwoods. And the coyotes are just going crazy down there. And fawn recruitment is it's terrible. And
Yeah.
you're seeing a serious decline in deer population because of it. There's just no place for them to hide anymore.
Exactly right, and it's tough. A lot of southern states where these issues are kind of amplified even more than Kentucky. LBL and other Daniel Boone's another one, but these hot spots, so to speak, of that you're mentioning here in Kentucky. Statewide though, when you look at the state as a whole and you kind of go big picture, we're still pretty blessed with pretty decent habitat, comparatively speaking to other states. But if you go south, if you go into some of those deep south states, Alabama, Georgia, those states are seeing really, really low poult to hen ratios and fawn recruitment rates. Some of the fawn recruitment rates down south in the deep south are as low as 0.2 to 0.3 fawns per doe, meaning it's taking anywhere from 3 to 4 does to raise one fawn to maturity, whenever they typically and generally have 2 apiece. So even though it's kind of tough here and it's been on the decline, we still technically have it better than most states throughout the country right now.
Absolutely, we do. Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I was going to ask real quick, and we got quite a few more minutes here. We got 4 or 5 more we can hang. So I just wanted to ask both of you guys a question because you're both so good at what you do and would have killer answers. And I wanted to say, I don't know, have you ever read Watership Down? Have you ever read that book? Long novel. You read that, Mike?
I read it way back in high school. It's been a little while, though.
I knew one of you would have read it. I was thinking it might have been Josh that would have jumped up because he's I don't know how much you're into that, but I'm sure you're a reader and a writer as well. So, but I wanted to talk because that book basically essentially is about the industrialization, modernization, building of subdivisions and uprooting of private property and public property to be used for certain things, and concrete and schools and how the infrastructure grows and becomes a bigger city. I mean, it's happening. If you couple those things along with the changing in weather, the more rain like we've had the last few years, higher predator volume out there, harder to thin it out, kind of thing. With those factors, do either one of you, Michael Penley, Josh Honeycutt, think that we will ever see the kind of numbers that we saw as kids growing up? I mean, we'll never get there, will we? We'll never get back, will we?
Well, I'll start if you want me to, but I don't know. And, I know that's not much of an answer, but we're seeing the wildlife adapt really well. I'm in Lexington right now. There are pockets in Lexington that are as full of deer as any place you'll ever see. And, the numbers are growing. We see coyotes in town all the time. We see deer. We see turkeys. There's a spot, if you're familiar with Lexington, right at New Circle Road, one of the big main highways around it. There's a spot where I watched a flock of turkeys all spring on a little bitty patch of grass between 2 subdivisions and a highway. Mm-hmm. So, we might not see the numbers we saw, but at the same time, the numbers early, 15, 20 years ago were some of the highest that the country has ever recorded for deer and turkey. So even back before this area was settled, we had bigger numbers 20, 30 years ago, 15, 20 years ago, than we did some of the wildlife back before the area was settled. So, maybe, but I think wildlife is a lot more adaptable than we give it credit for. So hopefully it'll continue to flourish.
Yeah, I agree. My answer to that question is yes, no, and it depends because, whitetails, speaking specifically to whitetails on this, they thrive off of edge habitat. And whenever you have development, as long as it's not just clear cut and you just have spotty development and, development here, development there, and there's still some habitat left mixed, in the mix, deer actually thrive off that, as you said, Michael. And, it's better to have that edge habitat that's been created from semi-development than it is to have a solid stand of mature timber. You could have if you take 100 acres and you develop or semi-develop, a third of that or a quarter of that and create some edge habitat in the process, there's going to be more deer on that 100 acres than if you just had 100 acres of solid hardwoods that are mature. So, it's an interesting topic, and a lot of people think that urbanization, directly leads to decreased population, and technically it doesn't. As you said, Michael, a lot of the research out there shows that deer thrive on it, as long as it's not, downtown Nashville or you're right in the middle of New York City. Obviously, there's no deer there unless you're in one of the parks. But it is an interesting topic and something to consider. But
Bowling Green's
deer do thrive off of that edge habitat that's oftentimes created in development.
Look alive, guys.
Mike, both of you, first of all, I've enjoyed just sitting here listening to you guys rap, and it's great stuff, man. Great recipe. You can check Michael Penley out at Mickey Penn 70 on Twitter, and Mickey Penn Eats on Instagram. I'm loving your Instagram page, man. I mean, Garrett is going to be following that very soon, so he can drive around all day at his other job and be hungry until he can stop and get something close to what you're not going to find much Penley kind of style stuff. We're gonna have to go to that. We're gonna have to go get that. Penley, you need to open a restaurant. I know thousands of people have told you that, but I mean, you talk about a monster hit. They'd come from miles around, man.
Restaurants are work, though, man.
Yes, they are.
More power to the guys that run the restaurant, the
True.
families that run a little privately owned restaurant. But man, they put in the work. They really do.
You said it right there. There's no question. My wife, longtime restaurateur, and I did plenty of busting and cooking growing up. I think we all had to do that. Get our elbows dirty and really find out the value of earning an hourly wage. Man, I tell you, it makes you want to get out there and try harder. But hats off to anybody that does it. But, man, I appreciate what you do and what Josh does. And, man, it's a great segment, and I can't wait to talk to you next week, bro. We might have a little bit of schedule change next week, but I'll let you know what's up, okay?
Sounds good, guys.
There you go. Josh Honeycutt, Mike Penley there talking about some good eats and some future numbers. Great answers from both of them. Don't go anywhere. We're going to come back with Josh Honeycutt featuring Josh Honeycutt on the Rock Castle Hunting segment. Don't go anywhere. ESPN Radio 1027.com.
In 1962, Becker and Green started Motel 6. They called it that because it was $6 per a night stay. Now you can spend $6 at the snack machine in the lobby. Renegade Marine and Outdoor Center was built to put you on the water with a smile. Just like the cost of hotel rooms is always on the rise, so is the price of financing. And you can't buy the same boat with the same credit score for the same interest rate as you could just a year ago. But you may be the type that doesn't even stay in a hotel room. You prefer the great outdoors with family time, camping, fishing, and boating. You've been thinking the last 3 seasons reasons, hey, I need a new boat. Well, don't wait till next year. Now is the time to consider coming to Renegade Marine and Outdoor Center. If you're looking to get on the water in a new craft this season like a Sun Tracker, Regency, Nitro, Riata, Ranger, Triton, Avalon, or Bennington, then you're in good hands with Renegade Marine and Outdoor Center's finance department. Plus, while you're there, they have all accessories to make your family smile all summer long, like floats, apparel, fishing tackle, the best in fishing boats and party cruisers. Just off the Parkway in Litchfield, Kentucky, call 270-259-0001, online at renegademarine.net.
If your business needs to cool, chill, or freeze, or warm, heat, or cook, you know you can't afford to disappoint. That's why you call BG Refrigeration, because BG Refrigeration never disappoints. They satisfy any heating or cooling need your business may have. Factories, restaurants, malls, plants, big industrial warehouses, doesn't matter. BG Refrigeration is who you call. Commercial heating and ducts, AC maintenance and replacement, commercial refrigeration, restaurant equipment, cold storage warehouses. BG Refrigeration ensures your heating and cooling needs are met so your business doesn't suffer. Walk-in freezers, exhaust systems, pizza ovens, ice makers, whatever heats or cools. If it's restaurant related, BG Refrigeration is, by far, the best company in South Central Kentucky to service them. In fact, there are a few companies that can or will even try to do what BG Refrigeration does every day. They're the company that's called in for the big jobs that require more experience, that need to be done right the first time. Why would you trust your business's commercial heating and cooling needs to anyone else? Turn to the experts. Call BG Refrigeration at 270-782-5391, where your comfort is their concern.
Is your yard the envy of the neighborhood? Or could you use a little help? Simplicity has the help you need with their popular Conquest Yard and Prestige garden tractors. Their free-floating mower deck and full-width rollers deliver a smooth, even cut and a beautifully striped effect just like the ballpark. Stop by the Vance store in Bowling Green and Glasgow today and test drive a Prestige or Conquest tractor from Simplicity. Simplicity, the way to a beautiful lawn.
Hunting in East Beverly Hills getting sorry every day. Me and Duke went as far back in the brush as you could go. The only thing we flushed out was a couple of real estate agents.
It's time to do some hunting on SOKY's Great Outdoors, brought to you by Rock Castle Shooting Center at Park Mammoth Resort, 22850 Louisville Road in Park City, Kentucky.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with us tonight on Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors. It's time for the Rock Castle Hunting Center shooting segment. Shooting center hunting segment. Did I get that? I'm a little dyslexic, Gary.
Yeah. Speaking of real estate agents, tonight's topic is going to be, leasing versus buying hunting land. This is obviously, there's other options out there. You can hunt public ground. You can still, despite common belief, you can still get permission to hunt properties out there. It just takes some effort. But tonight we're going to be talking about the leasing and buying options, kind of breaking those down, and maybe helping some people out there who are prospective land buyers or prospective leasers, and help them make that decision.
I'm excited about this topic, Josh, and I'll tell you why. Because I know that you've noticed, and we've chatted about it off air before. Seems like every year you see so many license plates from other states that are coming here to hunt. Mm-hmm. And, that motivates people to either try to use this as a lucrative operation of leasing their land. And there's so many different, I know you're going to dive into those, but it just seems to me like, these guys that are trying to sell this property don't have enough of it to sell. So they're out there trying to find property to actually
Same with leasing.
Man, I'm going to enjoy this.
Yeah, there's, the first thing, whether you're trying to decide whether you want to lease or buy, and we're going to talk about buying land first, but, you got to decide whether or not your budget is ready to buy land. And that's a big thing. That's a big topic, and it's a huge commitment. You got to ask the right questions and, ask yourself, but also ask a real estate agent. Realtree just partnered with United Country. United Country is the biggest real estate company in the world, and Realtree's partnered with them to create Realtree United Country. And, so it's going to be focused on, hunting specific properties. But, it doesn't matter, regardless of what company or real estate company you go to, you can ask them questions. They'll help you make decisions. Hopefully you get in touch with an honest one that's going to be honest with you whether or not they think you can do it based on your conditions and circumstances. But some of the things that you need to look at is decide what your total budget is when it comes to buying land, and deciding if you do have a budget that's capable of doing that, what your down payment can be. As you know, Brian, buying land is a big decision.
Huge decision, Josh. And if you don't, like you said, if you don't have that budget, you might get yourself in over your head a little bit. And because after the fact comes a lot of more expenditures because you've got to keep that land up, right?
Yeah. And a lot of these statistics that I'm going to throw out there are state, county, even county specific, town specific, is when it comes to especially stuff like your taxes and stuff like that on property. So some of these things, the statistics that we're going to throw out there can vary from place to place. So you definitely want to check for the areas that you plan to purchase or want to buy land in. But just speaking to that first point we just mentioned, banks are going to require anywhere from 10 to 20% of the total land value as a down payment. So that's definitely something to consider. Something else that you got to think about is how you're going to make that down payment. Are you going to use some of your money from a 401k? Do you have the cash saved up to do it? Do you have equity built up somewhere else that you can use as that down payment? There's a lot of different options out there and ways that you can make that happen.
And let me ask you this. Let's say that I'm a guy that's looking at a piece of, 35 acres for $250,000. And I'm like, I've got a little bit of the down payment, but I know I'm going to need to get somewhere close to, $25,000 out of the gate, So let's say that I put all my ducks in the same basket and I get it worked out. I come up with the down payment. I've been approved. Then I've got an allowance of what I know I can shop for. Mm-hmm. So out there shopping, Josh, as a guy who is more of a fisherman, if I was a deer hunter, what would I be looking for in a piece of property? And it doesn't necessarily mean acreage, but or does it mean more what's on that acreage? Like, is there a river connection? Is there a nice creek connection? Is there some kind of water on that land? Is it hilly? Is it bluffy? Is there a lot of, is there things you need to stay away from, or does any of that even matter?
Well, that's going to be a different answer for everybody based on what their goals are. Whether they have purely hunting in mind, if they want to do other recreational things on those properties, whether or not they want to have, yeah, for sure. Whether they want to do that, or whether they want to have a home or a cabin or something on the property. If they're wanting to fish, that's going to be a different answer for everybody. And some of the things that we're going to talk about in these other points are going to be part of that. But when it comes to just if I'm just looking for property myself, and this applies to getting permission, hunting public land, leasing, buying, doesn't matter what your type of access is. If I'm just looking for a place to hunt, but we can gear it toward how to buying. I would not buy a piece of property unless it has food, water, and cover. If it has those three things, deer can live there. It also look for a property that's huntable, and by huntable I mean something that's laid out to where you can hunt it efficiently. If it doesn't have good entry and exit route options to get in and out of your tree stands, and you're just going to bump deer and blow them out whenever you're walking in and out, that's not a huntable property. So you want to look at those, and the best way to do that is look at everything from a north, south, east, west perspective. Think about wind directions, think about location, proximity is everything. When you're looking at a property, you can't just look at what's on that property either, especially for most of us average Joes out there who are only going to be able to afford a smaller property that's somewhere in that 30, 40, 50, 60 acre range, under 100. We'll just use that as an example. But you got to look at what's around that property too. So if you're going to be looking at the property, you've also got to look at the perimeters of it. You need to know what your neighbors are doing. You need to know whether or not the surrounding hunters are managing for deer in a manner that you want to also manage for deer, because if you have different goals and perspectives than they do, it's going to be hard for you to achieve what you want to achieve on your property, because most of the time those deer are going to be not living on your 50 or 60 acres all the time. A deer's core area is about 30 to 50 acres. So if the deer lives in the heart of your property, they're not going to be really moving off your property during daylight hours. That said, a deer's home range is usually about 1 square mile, which can range from, the entire home range can range from 500 to 700 acres. Obviously, every single deer is different. So it's hard to keep deer on your property all the time. So you definitely want to make sure that the area, the surrounding properties are being managed in the way that your property is being managed, or there's little to no hunting around it. Because again, if your neighbors are just going in there and wiping everything out, it's going to be hard for you to achieve your goals if you're wanting to manage the age structure.
Man, this is very interesting stuff. I don't know if we've ever got this technical on this show. It's been an awesome segment. We're going to continue the Rockcastle Shooting Center hunting segment. We're going to take a quick break. Going to come back with Josh. And, man, I tell you, you've sparked a lot of people's interest, and this is great stuff that you just don't hear really talked about. And we've got all kinds of avenues we can go through on this one, Josh. And don't forget later coming up, fueling your outdoor lifestyle. That is the slogan for our Pabst Beef Jerky, and Pabst Beef Jerky is holding some great fishing tournaments, bass tournaments coming up. One of them at Nolan, June 8th. So you want to stick around. I'll talk with Kenneth Moore later on about that, and we're going to have the owner of the company on in a couple weeks. But I've already kind of snuck in, Garrett, and got some of this jerky out and been chewing on it, and I've got a little pack saved up for you. But we're going to break it out and eat it on the show when Jim's on there. But don't go anywhere. Come on back with Josh Honeycutt here on Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors, ESPN Radio 102.7.
This is Nate from Rockcastle Shooting Center. Did you know that one of the premier shooting ranges in the world is right here in South Central Kentucky? Rockcastle Shooting Center has something for everyone's recreational shooting enjoyment. From 3D archery to our brand new sporting clays course, handgun ranges full of steel to targets out to a mile. There's no better place to get some trigger time than Rockcastle Shooting Center. Non-members are welcome, and memberships start at $150 per year. We offer a fantastic range of firearms training and education opportunities from the most basic to the most advanced. Come see us, exit 48 on I-65, Park City, Kentucky. Visit rockcastleshootingcenter.com.
America is kept safe because the Army National Guard responds, protects, and supports our nation when it needs them most. The Army National Guard responds to disasters such as wildfires and floods. They protect us with missile defense, cybersecurity, and civilian support teams for chemical, biological, and radiological hazards. Be there for your community and your country. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn more about part-time service. Sponsored by the Kentucky Army National Guard. Aired by the Kentucky Broadcasters Association and this station.
Years ago, to get food from the Outback, you'd have to go out and hunt it yourself. But now the Outback comes to you. Outback Steakhouse in Bowling Green now delivers all your Aussie faves, from bloomin' onions to signature sirloins to work at home. What could be better after a day of hard yakking? Just click or tap over to Outback.com, select delivery, put in your address, choose your favorites, and we send it on over faster than a roo, and a lot less kicky too. Outback Steakhouse at Bowling Green, now delivering. Visit Outback.com to get started, or stop by anytime. 3260 Scottsville Road.
Hey, it's Nick Noble with the Rockcastle Gun Show here. We're talking about Swagger bipods. Do you want just your average barrel rest, or do you want to shoot with some swagger? Introducing the Swagger bipods. They expand your shooting zone with Swagger, the all-terrain hunting bipod. After more than 100 years, finally shooters have a bipod with patented, flexible, hyper-extending, telescoping legs that give you the agility like never before. So get rid of stiff legs and get the bipod with infinite maneuverability. Swagger, the bipod that moves.
Man, what happened to your truck? Well, got myself a prize 10-point buck, and well, you can see where it was laying. Nice bloodstain, dude. You should have seen Linex of Bowling Green for a spray-in liner.
For whatever you get into, trust Linex of Bowling Green with the largest auto aftermarket franchise in the nation. Pro installation of spray and bed liners, B&W gooseneck hitches, vent visors, bug shields, step bars, running boards, toolboxes, and WeatherTech floor mats. LineXofBowlingGreen.com. Stop by 3351 Louisville Road at the Porter Pike and Plum Spring intersection.
This is Nate from Rockcastle Shooting Center. Did you know that one of the premier shooting ranges in the world is right here in South Central Kentucky? Rockcastle Shooting Center has something for everyone's recreational shooting enjoyment. From 3D archery to our brand new sporting clays course, handgun ranges full of steel to targets out to a mile. There's no better place to get some trigger time than Rockcastle Shooting Center. Non-members are welcome, and memberships start at $150 per year. We offer a fantastic range of firearms training and education opportunities from the most basic to the most advanced. Come see us, exit 48 on I-65, Park City, Kentucky. Visit rockcastleshootingcenter.com.
I am Southern Kentucky Great Outdoors. I am your Spirit of the Wild brother. God bless America. God bless Kentucky. God bless working hard, playing hard American families in the asset column. We are blood brothers.
Uncle Ted getting her done on Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors. I'm hanging out with the one and only Josh Honeycutt. We're talking budgets, talking leasing, buying land, a lot of stuff. Garrett, if you're like me, man, we got to budget our gas and milk every week, man. We can't be thinking about big properties.
Budget? What is a budget?
My budget is what's in the couch.
Time to break out the piggy bank. Yeah, no. So we've been talking about this land buying concept, and we've already kind of covered, budget and what you want to look for in a property. And there's, we could talk about that in and of itself for 3 days straight. But the next things that you got to consider are all the other costs that involve buying a property. You got to decide whether you want to buy a turnkey property, aka ready to hunt, ready to go, or if you want to invest some sweat equity into your new property or prospective property,
which can sometimes save you a little money if you
right?
the sweat equity part.
Yes, it can, especially if you do the labor. Sweat equity still costs money though, and that's something to consider. Putting time, your time is money, and time is valuable. If you do the labor yourself, yes, you save some money on the cost there. It's as far as any kind of equipment that you got to use to achieve that sweat equity, any purchases you have to make for those improvements, that's going to cost you money. But a lot of times you can save money on the labor if you do it yourself and invest that sweat equity. Now, you have to look at every opportunity and every listing individually, though, and don't confuse the listing price with actual
price.
Don't confuse.
Make that offer a little lower, right?
Yeah. So don't confuse that listing price with actual value, though. Sometimes, based on what the listings are and how much a property costs, you could sometimes, depending on that price tag, buy a turnkey property cheaper than you would be able to make that or make those same improvements and on a property that don't have them already. So
that's when I light my cigar.
Yeah, there you go. So you got to consider, you got to analyze every single opportunity individually and make sure it's a good opportunity and has good value for the listing. Something else you got to consider is whether or not you want to have living quarters on it or not. If it's a pure hunting property and you already got a home and you don't want to build or don't want to have a place to stay on that property, you don't have to worry about that. So obviously that's not a factor. But if you want living quarters and utilities on a property and it doesn't already have it, you'll have to add that, and that's going to cost money too.
I enjoy toilets and bathrooms.
And that's true. That's true.
I could live with just that.
That's true. That's true. Absolutely. There obviously are other improvements that you're going to want to make, even if it's close to being turnkeys, and that costs money too. If you want to put in food plots, if you want to add tree stands to the property, if you want to put in ground blinds, elevated blinds, if you want to go in and cut trails, all of that costs money, regardless of what you're doing. If it's something as minute as going in and cutting access trails, you've got to buy a chainsaw if you don't already have it. And if you already got a chainsaw, it's costing you gas money. So, every improvement you make, regardless, even if you are making the improvements yourself, it's going to cost some money. So you have to factor that in whenever you're looking at your budget for and potentially looking at buying a property. You also, as we've already discussed, you got to look at your interest rates. Interest rates in a lot of areas range anywhere from 5 to 10%. A closer range is 5 to 7%. And that's area depending and bank depending and loan officer depending there, obviously. But that 5 to 6 to 7 range that's going to be with good credit. If you have bad credit, it's a completely different story altogether. And you also have to think about property taxes. That's going to be location specific as well, county specific. Usually, depending on where you are, it's somewhere in that $3 to $5 per acre range, and that's an annual cost. So you have to factor that into your overall budget. And then lastly, you got to consider closing costs. Closing costs are is a necessary part of property purchasing. And,
a lot of paperwork. Somebody's got to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah, and generally, when a closing cost is going to be somewhere around that 0.5 to 0.75% range of the total land sale value. So if you buy a $100,000 property, you're looking at $500 to $750 in closing costs, and that can go up pretty quick depending on who you purchase through. and who you in what the different circumstances you find yourself in. So those are the things that you got to consider when it comes to deciding if your budget is ready or not to buy hunting land. You can go to Realtree.com for a lot more detailed information on an article that we published today on this very topic. I interviewed Realtree United Country's land pro Slade Priest on this topic. And
hey, listen, if you're dealing with a guy who's also a preacher, you know you're
Priest. He's a Slade. Priest is his last name.
Oh, Priest is his last name. Never mind, Father.
Miscue there.
Sorry,
miscue.
Father.
No worries, son. But now, on the flip side of all of that, you have the option of leasing. If you decide that your budget is not ready, or if you're not ready to make that long-term commitment to purchasing a property, or if you just simply haven't found the right property to buy, but you still want a place to hunt and you have a little cash to throw around, leasing is a viable option. I'd do it. I've been doing it for years now. I haven't actually purchased a property yet myself, full disclosure. I plan to in the future, and I'm currently in the making plans and doing the things I need to do to try to make that happen. But in the meantime, until I make that come to fruition and able to fulfill that personal dream, I am just leasing property. So that's the short-term fix. If you can't find a place to buy permission, if there's no public land near you, or if it's not any good, the next best option is to find a lease, especially if you like to do the work yourself. And which is, I have nothing against outfitters, but I would get much more satisfaction out of having a lease and doing all the work myself versus going to an outfitter. And I've personally hunted with outfitters, and again, have nothing against them. They are a great service, and if that's your thing, that's your thing. I have done it and done it with success, but again, just my personal preference. I like doing all the work myself, and so that's what I do.
And you know what?
Of the time.
You just alluded to the fact of something I wanted to say. The other day, first of all, you have plenty of fortitude. There's no doubt about that. But what I wanted to say was, you did a post about making a ladder to your deer stand and talking about your dad Marty was going to help you, and you're like, no. I thought that was very touching. That was awesome.
Yeah, that's another story that we put out recently on Realtree.com.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but it kind of went along with the sweat equity there.
Hey, this is your show, brother.
I know where you get that.
That was a title, an article we did on what was titled "The Classy Deer Camps," and all the reasons why deer camp traditions are a big part of our heritage. But you can go to Realtree.com if you want to read more about that. But on to the leasing topic, tips when it comes to leasing hunting lands on a budget. Your first option is to lease less land. You don't need a big farm to kill deer. Leasing the right property is more important, quality over quantity. That's the mindset. Properties under 50 acres are much more affordable than those of higher acreages anyway. Another thing to remember is to lease in less popular areas. Land in areas that doesn't receive as much press will be cheaper to lease. Focus on states, regions, and counties that don't get into the headlines as often. Oftentimes, you'll still find pretty good deer in those areas, and you're going to pay less per acre for it. Number 3, the thing to remember is to lease land no one else wants. Just because others ignore a property, and this is getting down to specific properties, doesn't mean that it's a bad property to lease. Tough access, hilly terrain, bluffs, as you mentioned earlier, all these things are going to drive prices down. So just because that is a hindrance doesn't mean you can't get production out of that property. You just have to be willing to work a little harder to milk the track's value. The next thing to remember is to lease privately instead of through agencies. There's nothing wrong with agencies such as Hunting Lease Network, Base Camp Leasing, but you're going to pay more per acre for it. Leasing through private individuals is going to be a little cheaper. Just make sure you still protect yourself with the contract and leasing insurance and stuff like that. Number 5, lease with partners. When you lease with somebody else, it drives costs down. Share the cost. That helps you, you pay less for it, and you can get bigger properties. Number 6 is to lease the right property. It's better to have 30 or 40 really good acres than 200 or 300 average ones. Think about proximity, layout, and huntability. And then lastly, lease luck requires a little prayer. It takes time to find that right property. Don't just go in and lease the first thing you see or the first thing that becomes available. Be patient. Wait for the property that you feel in your gut is going to be the producer.
Man, that's all great stuff. Don't be hasteful when making large decisions, right, Josh? That's for sure. And I would tell the youngsters, watch that credit rating. Keep that going because you don't want to get in the backwards. You may be like me, 50 before you could even think about buying land. Coming up, we've got. Go ahead, Garrett.
Weren't you trying to convince me to get on FanDuel just a little bit ago? You're trying to ruin my credit.
Anyway, we're going to talk to Pabst Beef Jerky, huge tournament coming up with a chance to get into even larger tournament but it's $1,000 guaranteed prize pool. Nolan Lake, June 8th. You want to hear all about that, and it's from Pabst, and their slogan. I love their slogan: fueling your outdoor lifestyle. Pabst Beef Jerky coming up on the Renegade Marine and Outdoor Center fishing segment here on Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors, ESPN 102.7.
Although hunting to most of us is much more than just harvesting animals, why not better your deer herd's health with Big & J Long Range Attractant? Big & J is highly digestible, high in protein, and isn't full of preservatives. With Big & J Long Range Attractants, you're not only exploiting one of the few weaknesses whitetails have, their stomachs, but you're maximizing antler growth, improving overall herd health, and pulling deer from your neighbor's property. So whether your goals are to fill the freezer, kill mature bucks, or both, Big & J Long Range Attractants will stack the odds in your favor, all the while making your deer herd bigger and healthier.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
It's time to go fishing with Renegade Marine and Outdoor Center, 415 Commerce Drive, Litchfield, Kentucky, on SOKY's Great Outdoors.
Welcome back to Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors, Renegade Marine and Outdoor Center fishing segment. It's going to be a good one, a great tie-in today, folks. All the fishermen and fisherwomen out there, you need to get into this thing coming up. We've got a great tournament. It's going to be landing at Nolan Lake here in June, and we've got Mr. Ken Moore on the Linex hotline. Linex Bedliners, Roger Gina, Louisville Road, Porter Pike intersection. Get over there and protect the bed of that truck, especially if you're hauling your new Ranger or Nitro around. Kenneth Moore on the Linex hotline. What's up, Ken?
Not much, just waiting to get back out on the lake.
Yeah, aren't we all, buddy? Aren't we all? It's been a wet one this spring. I don't know up your way. You're northern Kentucky, northwest up there. How are the lakes and bodies of water? Did they suffer?
Yeah, the lakes have been really high with, Barron especially and Rough River not even being able to get down to summer pool. Nolan's been probably the most stable lake in the area.
It really has, and I've been on it a couple times this spring, 3 times to be exact. Haven't fished a tournament yet, but been some pretty good numbers coming out. I know the crappie bite was really good. I think it's kind of slowed down a little bit, if you will, but the bass is really good up there right now. I mean, I grew up on that lake, Ken, so I lived about 10 miles from it, so I've been on it a lot. Great, beautiful, beautiful lake. But Barron has been, always the go-to bassing headquarters, and it's been tough on those guys up there. A lot more people driving over to Nolan to fish. So, but everything's starting to pan out. It's starting to look like it's normal again, and just in time too, because on the 8th of June at Nolan, we're going to have Moody Deer going to be the takeoff spot there, Moody Deer Ramp. Great little spot. 5:30 a.m. start time. You're gonna be willing in, get in by 2:30, and get those bags weighed. And hopefully you'll come out a winner because this has got a big 80% payback, and it includes a big bass. The entry fee is just $95, and I think you get a chance to be in the Uncle Sam Bass Challenge. And we'll let you maybe tell us a little bit more about the details on that. But I want to tell everybody while they're listening where to mail it. You want to mail your entry form and make all checks payable to John Newton, who's a regular on our show. That's going to go to 94 Lincoln Trail Road, Mammoth Cave, Kentucky, 42259. You can also contact John directly at John, KYUSA, BASSIN at yahoo.com. His phone number is 270-535-5774. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to talk a little bit more about some other caveats to this thing, to where you're going to be able to maybe punch your ticket to the really big tournament at the 2020 Lucas Oil Tournament of Champions on Chickamauga. Am I saying that right?
Chickamauga, yeah.
Yeah, Chickamauga. I like that. Well, I tell you, first of all, this is all brought to you by Pabst Beef Jerky. It's the Pabst Beef Jerky Open, and I tell you what, you guys were nice enough to send us, Jim and yourself were nice enough to send us some to try out. And I've been kind of holding out till we get Jim on so we can chomp on the radio. But I'd be honest with you, I've shamelessly already jumped in there, Ken, and that's some great jerky, man.
Yeah, it really is. That razor cut where they give you a few more pieces in a bag really lets the flavor pop through.
Man, I'm glad you said that because you're exactly right. I had the same thought when I first tore it open, and I do like that. And it's just easier to get down. I mean, it's easier to chew. I mean, you could throw it in there like like some snuff or something, and just kind of let it season in your mouth. That's what I was doing. How did Pabst come about?
Jim, the owner, has been in the distribution business for a while now. And just through all his experiences and what he's distributed to the local C-stores in the areas, he actually had the idea to get more out of, I believe, that bag by doing that razor cut and then doing a little different on a few flavors with the Grippos out of Cincinnati, but then some of the normal flavors with the mild and Cajun and barbecue.
And I'm sure he's probably got millions of ideas for different flavors coming up. But I mean, these are what a great medley that you've got here. And I tell you, it reminds me kind of, I don't know, when you were a kid, my grandfather owned a country store, and I would go down there and get as close to the big cutter as I could, the big wheel there, because I used to love watching them throw a loaf on and slicing it off. But it reminds me kind of like chipped ham. You know how you would get the chipped ham? It was just better. I mean.
Yep, and again, with the processing being done right there, it's actually done in, I believe, Tennessee. And the local markets really go from Nashville on up to Indianapolis is his core area. So everything's fresh and good in the bag.
As I understand it, Ken, you're a fisherman yourself, right?
Yes, sir.
What is your favorite? I mean, are you a crappie guy? Because we have this, it's kind of like the policemen and the firemen. They don't get along. It's kind of like Marines and Army. It's like when they need to be buddied up, they can be, but other than that, they're rivals. Which one do you like, crappie or bass best, or is it a different species you like to go after?
I actually grew up in New Jersey in the ocean fishing with aunts and uncles and whatnot there on the South Jersey shore. So moving to Kentucky about 20 years ago was a major shock.
I bet.
Getting into fresh water and the rivers and the Ohio and everything, because I live in Louisville. But, I'm a bass guy. Fish a lot of bass tournaments, and Pabst has joined on to help do some sponsorship and marketing for our AK fishing team. And we fish about 20 tournaments a year.
Nice.
Right now.
Well, how much success have you guys had?
Well, I'd like to say, that my wife still makes me work, so it's not enough success as I would like. But, we got some great checks last year. We fished a lot of big tournaments, a lot of the USA Bass, and we've qualified. We just fished the Lucas Oil 2 weeks ago, as well as the Ranger Classic on the national side for USA Bass. And then we've got, we fish a Triton Owners Tournament, which this month is May 31st and June 1st down at Paris, where we have a little over 400 boats. We've gotten a check a few years out of that. So
very good.
We do pretty well.
I'll tell you, anytime you can do what you love and every now and then cash a check, it just doesn't get much better than that. Although I went down and covered the Bassmaster Classic this year in Knoxville, and those guys really have it made, don't they?
Yes, when you've got all that availability just to the market, the new products, and then the lifestyle where you really can fish.
You really can. I wish I would have had some Paps to take with me. I would have handed out some to like Van Dam and some of those guys. Get this in your mouth, man. This is good stuff. Someone would probably try to use it as bait, though. You never know. Man, I'll tell you, first of all, I think it's cool that you came from a saltwater background, because that's something that fascinates me. And I was down in Florida a couple weeks ago and was watching these guys at the pier, which I thought was just awesome. They've got, totally different rigs. I didn't grow up around that. So, I mean, these huge reels and this, different kind of situation. And I, just chit-chatting with them and just finding out all I can. But I got to see a Spanish mackerel caught there, and I just thought that was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, I believe the saltwater fish, one, they're bigger. They've got a bigger place to grow, but the colors and just the variety is so diverse that you can go from catching little ones to big ones in just a couple miles of ocean.
U.S. Bassin is the tournament trail, and it's a good one. And, they put on some quality stuff, and I know John Newton does a great job at anything he does, tournament venues. And Renegade Marine, huge sponsor, and we're just glad to have PAPS around us, and I'm just so glad that you sent this stuff to us. Tell us a little bit about what's coming up in the future, maybe, because we're going to have Jim on in a few weeks, the creator and owner of PAPS, and I'm looking forward to that. But tell us a little bit about Jim, maybe, and a little bit more about this PAPS beef jerky, man. It's good stuff.
All right, Jim's local here to Louisville. He owns PAPS beef jerky. And they have the beef sticks as well. He's got some marketing agreements. He makes that one of the flavors is Grippos from the Grippos barbecue.
Yes.
Potato chips out of Cincinnati. And he distributes, again, his base market is all your 5 Stars, Speedways, Thorntons, any of your C stores in the area with the beef jerkies.
Yeah, I've been to many Thorntons. Next time I'm up that way, and there's the one I stop at usually is on my way to Minnesota up in Henderson, and we usually stop there and gas up. I'll be sure next time to grab me a big bag of PAPS for the road trip. And that's another good thing jerky's for, man. Road trips, fishing, hunting, sitting out in a duck blind or a turkey blind. I mean, not much better go-to than some good jerky, and it doesn't get much better than PAPS. I mean, this stuff, it really is that good, and we want to encourage all of our listeners, next time you're in one of those outlets, grab a bag of PAPS. And try it out, and you'll be a long-time loyal eater of this stuff once you get it. Ken, real quick, what's the biggest saltwater fish you've ever hooked?
Actually, last January, I was lucky enough to go on a boys' trip with my brother-in-law and nephew, and we went to Costa Rica, and I had about a 300-pound blue marlin on, which was absolutely amazing.
And I get flashbacks of Jaws when, he straps in and they put the belt on. I can just see you fighting that thing. Describe to us, because a lot of my listeners, some of them have been in similar situations and hooked some things like that, but most of us have never gotten the experience. Just from the start, from setting a hook to, do they set the hook themselves and you just go, or how does that work?
Well, most of it's trolling, so as they go through, the baits that they put out don't have hooks in them. They're more like teasers and attractors. So the fish, you'll actually see the sword for either the marlin or the sailfish. You'll see the sword come up, and they'll hit at the teaser baits. And they actually then, the first and second mates will drop a bait down, a live bait with a hook in it, and then drop it further back than the teasers. And when the fish take it, then they basically just set the hook and hand you the pole to hold on.
Wow.
Because it's all you can do to hold on.
See, I didn't know anything about the teaser bait situation. Is that just on larger species, or they do that, with grouper and red snapper, or is it, what's closest to bass fishing out of a sea-bearing boat?
Black sea bass, is a great one. You can catch them with moving baits, or bluefish maybe. On the East Coast where I grew up, the grouper and everything's more a southern fish on the bottom. You're bouncing live baits off the bottom. But I really think, a bluefish or sea trout or wheaties, from where I come from, you can catch them down in Louisiana and all as well.
Very cool.
But that's probably the closest to bass fishing.
Oh man, that's listen, I didn't even realize I was going to get all this free information out of you, Ken, on saltwater fishing, but I've loved it because I've only we had one guy on who's a guide down in Florida Keys, and that was the closest thing I had. This has been even more exciting having you talk about it. You grew up in it. Last question, did your dad or parents, or was it a friend who got you into fishing up in New Jersey when you were a youngster?
Yeah, well, most of my uncles had boats, so as a young man, I was willing to do that extra work and show up early and stay a little later, to help clean up and make sure things were taken care of.
Smart man.
So, I got more of a call, I think, than some of my cousins did to get out there and have that opportunity.
What a great story! Definitely want to recap with you, Ken, after the tournament. Transpires, and we'll talk about you. Maybe you can give me some highlights on it. John will too. John's on at least once a month with us. We have Kentucky Fish and Wildlife on once a month, and then we get to do things like this and talk to great companies like Paps and great fellows like Ken Moore, man. We appreciate having you on Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors here. I want to give out that number one more time, and then I'm going to put this flyer on our webpage, Ken. But June 8th is going to be the takeoff. No Lynn, Moody Deer. Right now, you can call John Newton, and if you want some, if you're listening right now and just want to pick up the phone, 270-535-5774. You can mail your $95 entry fee. It's almost seems like we're taking advantage of you on that with the big payback that's going to be coming out of this one, and with the ability to punch your ticket to the 2020 Lucas Oil Tournament of Champions on Chickamauga, Tennessee. First place guaranteed 10 G's.
Yeah, this is actually a guaranteed $1,000 first place prize as well. So
yes, I'm glad you said that. I forgot to mention that $1,000 guaranteed. That'll get boats in the water, my man. That's good stuff.
We're hoping so.
Ken Moore, man, appreciate you being on the Line X Hotline, Ken. We look forward to talking to Jim, creator, owner of Paps Beef Jerky. Go fish the Paps Beef Jerky Open, $1,000 guaranteed first place prize, 80% payback in this thing, $95 entry fee. Ken, thank you so much.
All right, thank you for having us.
We'll be right back. Southern Kentucky's Great Outdoors, ESPN Radio, 1027.com.